join the IAS was a childhood dream of mine, prompted by my grandfather and others. Working with the Chief Minister as his principal secretary, seeing governance from the top, how the cabinet functions, how the Chief Minister as a constitutional leader manages different constituents of the government, politicians, and we say they are, obstructionists and they do this, that. Now, I must say I'm lucky because the political executive with whom I work, the ministers, the chief ministers, the MLAs, by and large, 95% supported me. They were with me for all these endeavors because we live in a political democracy. Today, the shots are called by the politicians, the political executives. The bureaucracy is subordinate to them. We are not an independent body. Draw the line, and if the politicians don't like you, they'll transfer you.
Hello everyone, I am Pallavi and you are watching Indian Masterminds. Today we have a very special guest with us, someone who made an extraordinary choice after studying at world-renowned institutions like Princeton and Harvard. Instead of settling abroad, he returned to India to serve his country by joining the administrative services. Not only did he clear the IAS exam in his first attempt, but he also went on to serve the nation for 36 remarkable years, leaving a lasting impact. His contributions have played a pivotal role in shaping Karnataka and transforming Bengaluru into the vibrant city we know today. So, without any delay, let's welcome former IAS officer Mr. K. Jairaj. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me the opportunity to talk with you, and welcome to Indian Masterminds.
Thank you, Pallavi. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to also interact with you on Indian Masterminds. Thank you.
So, sir, like I was reading about you, and your academic journey includes degrees from premier institutes like Princeton, Harvard. So, after having so much exposure in academics, how did you decide to be a civil servant?
Yeah. So, Pallavi, to take the answer directly forward, I went to Princeton after my MA in the Delhi School of Economics.
Okay.
And I went to study public policy and public administration at the then Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. It was a 2-year MPA. And while I was in Princeton, I realized that, my first calling was in the IAS and that, I really wanted to work in India. And this exposure in the US was great, but I didn't really feel a need to stay on in America and work and so on. And I met several senior civil servants who were there
in
Princeton for various work experiences. And when they talked about their background and all that, they came under what is called a Pawan Fellow Program. I think that's been discontinued now. From different countries, including, Pakistan and West Indies and so on. I realized that that's where I want to be because to join the IAS was a childhood dream of mine, prompted by my grandfather and others. And I come from a, professional family and so on. So then I came back and wrote the IAS exam in Delhi. And then I was lucky to qualify and got the Karnataka cadre. And so that was the first part of my education, Princeton. Then the second part is that, after how many years? 15 years in the IAS, I applied for what is called the Mason program, Edward S. Mason program in public policy and leadership. And that, Edward S. Mason program is something that Harvard University every year invites some 30 or 40 people from all over the world who are mid-careerists to come and spend a year and a half at the Kennedy School. So I went through another selection process for that, and I was again shortlisted for the Mason program, where I went and I spent a year and a half at the Kennedy School and got a second MPA, but this time at the Kennedy School. And to answer your question, the difference between the first time and the second time was, first time I went as directly from Delhi School of Economics, 1-year teaching experience at Jairaj College. But the second time I went after 14, 15 years work in the government. So both were different perspectives which have helped me a lot in the IAS. The first was, it gave me a background in, what government is and how does it work, more or less the theory of it all. The second was really exceptional because it helped me to relate all my experiences in the government to actual public policy formulation, leadership, communication. And I took a fantastic course at Harvard the second time I was there called Negotiations and Skillful Negotiations. On 1 month, taught in the Harvard Law School by Roger Fisher and Bruce Patton. And they, tell you what is the meaning of principled negotiation. How do you negotiate? How do you advance your interest without hurting the other person, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Project management. Those are all things that have stayed with me right through my IAS career. And I think I have benefited immensely from this exposure at Princeton and Harvard. And I think my work might have also been a little qualitatively affected by this exposure in terms of getting things done, outcome orientation, getting the best out of people, and so on and so forth.
Right. So, sir, when you came back first time from Princeton, just in one attempt you cracked IAS, or there were
first attempt.
So 1985.
First attempt. 1976 IAS.
Okay, 76. I was confused. I thought 1986. I'm so sorry.
No, 1976. In fact, when I went for my interview, they said, "What are you doing in Princeton?" I said, "I'm completing my MPA." And they said, "Why do you want to join the IAS?" And I gave a truthful reply and said, "That's where I feel my interests are there and I feel I can work for the country." Okay, so that was about my IAS journey from Princeton and Harvard into the IAS, and then what impact.
So during the conversation, you mentioned that there are many professionals in your family. So were there any in civil services, or no, you are the first?
No, I was the first. In fact, it was my grandfather's everlasting regret that none of his sons, that is my uncles, joined the IAS. And so, yes, I was the first one.
Okay. So when you look back at your career, which is the most satisfying moment you could recall? Any initiative, any posting, anything, any work?
Yeah. That's a good question. And what I want to tell you is that I was very fortunate, Pavitra, in my IAS career was really memorable in many respects. And today, when I look back, I feel many experiences qualify for that term memorable. To begin with, for instance, I went as Deputy Commissioner of the District of Tumkur. And that is really a very formative period in my life, to be the collector of a district and to go around and to make an impact on the lives of people and to do something good for the public at large. But that is not the only thing. Thereafter, I was fortunate to have headed the Karnataka Power Corporation, implementing these giant projects, thermal, hydro, raising resources for them, putting together a project management team, implementing ahead of schedule. Those were the project management techniques that I kind of learned at Princeton. And then, later on, even, working in Bangalore City Corporation, I think you have a question on that, on the self-assessment scheme. Yes. And then, forget that. We can talk about that later. Then working with the Chief Minister as his principal secretary, seeing governance from the top, how the cabinet functions, how the Chief Minister as a constitutional leader manages different constituents of the government. And then even in KSRTC, Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation, introducing market segmentation for the first time, bringing new buses like the Volvo, branding them, giving them a color, a feel, a look, service comfort, service standards, guarantees, service guarantee, and making them work. And today, it's a great success. It's called Airavata. These are the new buses that have been in operation. And so, each of these jobs, even while I was retiring, thanks to the Chief Minister's initiative, guaranteed delivery of public services on time, called Sakala. So, I'm very, very lucky and blessed that, I can look back and say all these things have mattered to me. And, I don't know how much of an impression, how much of a output I have created, but I really look back with great satisfaction. And see, if I may say so, Pallavi, it's not I. I should not use I, because
We,
nothing is
you
done.
and your team, right?
Nothing is done in the government by yourself.
Right.
You're not
You need
like a
it.
heroic figure. It is the team. It's
Right.
also the enabling circumstances. For instance, we always complain of our politicians and we say they are, obstructionists and they do this, that. Now, I must say I'm lucky because the political executive with whom I work, the ministers, the chief ministers, the MLAs, by and large, 95% supported me. They were with me for all these endeavors, and even if I made a mistake, they were able to pick me up and help me, guide me. So I'll give you an example. Very early in my career, you're posted as a SDO, subdivisional officer, what we call in Karnataka assistant commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
And so the district I was there had severe drought, and a lot of money was given by the government for drought relief, employment, and all that stuff. So I really didn't know anything about it, and some programs were drawn up, and that MLA was a wise man, senior person who was supposed to be a tough guy, and he called me on the side and said, "Look, you are new to this. Be careful, because all these guys under the guise of drought relief, they can swindle money from the government. So always be watchful of the implementation of these programs, make surprise visits, see whether people are really employed, check the role with the actual people turned out." I thought, that was very good advice for me, because nobody would have given that kind of advice. And I remember him with great gratitude. So I have had the best of relations with politicians. I was principal secretary to the late S.M. Krishna. He just passed away a few weeks ago.
Right.
He was such a great constitutional authority, man who was exemplary in all respects. At least so far as his governance and leadership were concerned, they were just truly praiseworthy. And I learned so much from being his principal secretary. So
sir,
very
right now,
positive.
as you are mentioning that you had great coordination with your political people or jo bhi were there. So I wanted to ask you, like this kind of questions always come, that bureaucrats have to work under some kind of political pressure. So have you ever felt any conflict while doing any task and sometimes managing the politics of that area or that task? Have you ever
So
felt any conflict?
this question is asked to me often. In fact, even yesterday, Pallavi, one young man was going for the IAS interview and he wanted to meet me and he asked this question. So yes, there have been, tugs and pulls, because we live in a political democracy. Today,
Right.
the shots are called by the politicians, the political executives. The bureaucracy is subordinate to them. We are not an independent body like it may have been before independence. And we must be conscious of our role and responsibility. But having said that, the fact of the matter, at least in my experience, from what I know, is that if you, as a conscientious public servant, draw the line and say, this is what I can do and this is what I will not do, and you make an attempt to be pragmatic, to try to understand what the other people's problems are and try to reconcile them within your framework, chances are that, conflict is minimized. And the chances are that the other side, the politicians, also know who you are,
Right.
what you're capable of doing, because your reputation will precede you.
Right.
The moment they know that you are a fair-minded, honest person and you will do whatever is required of the job, I think, at least in Karnataka, my experience was that the majority of our politicians paid respect to that.
Right.
There were some people with whom, I couldn't get on well, but then that is part of the... I always advise people, Pallavi, those who come after me,
Mhm.
You draw the line, and if the politicians don't like you, they'll transfer you. That's
Yeah,
all. What else
that's
can they
the
do?
best. That's the best
Yeah.
they can do. So,
Arey, but one thing is important. ये क्या है? There
mm,
must be some niceties. See, no politician likes to be told on his face,
right,
whatever you're doing is wrong. Don't do it.
right,
वो
right.
उनको पसंद नहीं है. You have to be careful, even when you are saying no, or
Mm-hmm.
when you are saying please reconsider. There's a way of doing it. One-on-one meetings, and you tell him, ऐसा है, sir. This is what it is. This is not correct, and I suggest that you don't do it. If you are able to give that kind of proper advice in
Mm-hmm.
a very sober manner, and he respects your personality,
Mm-hmm.
he or she, chances are that, see, we have to work with the politicians.
Yeah, that's the part
We,
of
we,
your
we,
job.
we, we cannot live on our own and do whatever we want, and we cannot brag and say, I have been transferred 40 times. Usme kya hai?
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay in a job, you have to
Right.
contribute, you have to make an impact.
Right. Even I don't feel I read about officers who have been transferred and they are mostly deemed as honest officers. But I always feel because they are being transferred, but I always feel ki what's their contribution? Are they making any impact? Because if you
Correct.
are not staying there for 1 year, you cannot do anything because public administration is such a huge job which can't be done in 1 day. You can't achieve it.
Correct.
And if you feel getting transfer makes you honest, but then you are not maybe honest with your work because you are not achieving the target or result with because of which you chose civil services. So that's my
Correct.
opinion, but yeah, it varies. Many people think the other way also. So anyway, sir, you also chronicled your administrative journey in this book called, please correct me if I am not pronouncing it right, Jaithra Yatre.
Jaithra Yatre. I'll
Yeah, it
explain the
came.
basis to you,
It came
Pallavi.
in 2012, I guess.
Yeah, just on the eve of my retirement. But kya hua?
Hmm.
There was there was this very enterprising editor of a Kannada newspaper called Vishweshwar Bhatt.
Mm-hmm.
He was in charge of a Kannada paper called Vijay Karnataka, which was a very prominent newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So once I met him, I met him in some occasion, and I told him, he was talking about how even administrative service officers must write their memoirs, yevo, and it was not being written. So I suddenly told him, shall I also write what my experiences are? He says,
Right.
of course you must write, but there's a condition. One is, don't brag about yourself. Maine ye kiya, maine wo kiya.
Mm-hmm.
People don't like all that. Secondly, look at it from the other person's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
those who are beneficiaries or affected, and make it a little third person and make it of topical interest, some, things like that. So, I wrote in English actually,
Okay.
and
It
it
was
was
trans
translated
in
into
Kannada.
Kannada by a very good friend of mine who worked with me, who
Mm-hmm.
was a leading Kannada writer, Mr. Prahalad Rao.
Okay.
And what we did was I began to write a series of articles. Gave some limit every week, within so many words you must write. And I learned how to write articles within those limits. And
Okay.
I chronicled my experiences.
And
My first experience, in Jaithra Yatre was, I was sub-collector, assistant commissioner in hospital.
mm-hmm.
And what I had done was I had the encephalitis was in vogue, the brain fever because of pigs.
Right. Huh.
So I was also administrator of the municipal corporation, and so I ordered that all pigs should be removed from the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And so they removed all the pigs from the roads, and after about 2 months, I got a petition
Mm-hmm.
addressed to Chief Minister from some fellow, which said that this assistant commissioner is a tyrant. He
Mm-hmm.
has destroyed 5,000 pigs of mine,
Oh.
and he should be immediately transferred. And I got very scared and afraid. I said, my God, maine kya kiya yaar?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to handle it. And then suddenly, when I was discussing, one ordinary clerk told me, why are you afraid, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Under the rules of the municipality, some obscure rule,
Mm-hmm.
if anybody has a wild animal in the limits of the town, he
Right.
has to pay a license fee of 500 rupees.
Okay.
So this fellow says, he has got 5,000 animals, so he has to pay 5,000 into 500 by way of fine. Then we will see. So I sent a notice to him saying, you have said such a thing. Now you pay this fine. If you don't pay, I will recover as arrears of land revenue.
Oh.
So within 1 month, he wrote back and said, no, I never wrote such a petition to the government. So I said, I was saved because of the thinking of an ordinary clerk.
Right.
That was my first article in the newspaper, and I thought I was a very premier IAS officer. ये वो मैंने बाहर पढ़ के आया हूँ. क्या है? I was saved by this guy.
Right.
So and the Vishweshwar Bhatt put it in the form of a serial thing called Jaithra Yathre, which means the journey of Jairaj. Jaithra Yathre. Every Tuesday he would publish it. And this first article of mine got so much of publicity, and so many people wrote to me and said, you're writing very well, continue. And so that gave me a lot of impetus. And I wrote 62 weeks.
Okay. And then it was chronicled in a book.
Just before I retired, the then chief minister, and my mentor, Mr. Narayan Murthy of Infosys, and Mr. Girish Karnad, and our Guruji, so many of them were present, and almost it was like my retirement function.
Okay.
At the council, and they released the book. So that was the first book, and I was really proud of that book, and it really brought out my life experiences, but not in a bragging manner. I'm too good, in this manner.
Right.
Like I gave you examples.
Yeah,
so many other examples. Yeah.
Right. On that note, we are stopping our conversation for now. The second part, which is about the evolution of Bengaluru into the startup hub and Silicon Valley of India, will follow soon. So like and subscribe our channel to watch the upcoming interview and all the updates about the bureaucracy in this country.